Hey guys, VaulSC here, hope you're doing well. In this video I'm going to be talking about a diorama that I put together for Conquest, the Last Argument of Kings. It is called the Infantry and Cavalry faction, and it is meant to be a proxy model miniature for the Archangel for 100 Kingdoms. Now, just to explain why I've done that and a bit of background behind it, for the longest time, and we're talking about several years, probably more than that. God, how long has Conquest been out now? Maybe 6 years? I'm not really sure. But the 100 Kingdoms has been your traditional Empire and Bretonian style, brave men with sticks, as some would say, faction where you're playing as a generic humans. You cannot take any brutes, you cannot take any monsters. There's not very much supernatural stuff other than the superhuman knights and the occasional spell from your chapter mage and your theist priest. And if you wanted to be into playing with monsters, you would go with Wadroon, or if you want humans and monsters, you go with Nords. And that's the way it's been for the longest period of time. And we often would say to each other, look, this is the faction that is like the most honest in terms of it just being the basic men and their pets, their horses, and nothing majorly supernatural in the sense of giant monsters walking into battle with you. And that just felt like part of the identity. It was part of the definition, the characterization of 100 Kingdoms as a faction. But then suddenly they came in and they said, look, we're going to be bringing in a monster anyway. Here's this big Archangel. Here's the lore for it. The lore was very cool, and a lot of people liked the idea of it, and it's a great miniature. Look, it's a really good kit. I would like to assemble it and paint it myself one day. And after it came out, a lot of people were turned around to it, like people who previously thought, nah, I just really would have preferred like no monsters at all. Some of those people changed camps, and they are firmly in the, yay, the Archangel is really cool camp. For me personally, I still kind of feel like it would have been better if 100 Kingdoms had remained a faction that didn't have any monsters, but I don't want to disrespect anybody that likes the Archangel. I think it's actually a great miniature. It's a very well-designed piece in terms of the gameplay. The rules for it are very, very good. It's not too powerful, but it's definitely powerful enough that you want to take it if you're running a Theist sub-faction. And it just seems like a really cool miniature and a really cool inclusion to your catalog, and I'd like to own it one day. For me personally, though, I still have that feeling of I like just the rawness of the infantry and the cavalry going into battle without the support of anything like too crazy that the other factions have. So I thought what I would do is for my own collection, I would put together a little diorama that would include a mounted warrior to look a little bit like somebody from the Theist faction, and I would take some of the Sakurai off the bases and put them onto the diorama as well, and it would be built completely on top of a standard monster base, and then I could just use it as a monster in my casual games. Obviously not tournament legal, because Parabellum want to see only their own miniatures, and I don't think this would count for that. But let's just do a quick run through of how I came by this diorama and how it was created. So first of all, I went on Etsy and I had a look around for some 3D prints that I could make, and I came across this guy. This, if you want to buy this yourself, one of the people that do it are Creepy Prints, and just search something like Knight, Cleric, Paladin, Rider, Commander, that kind of thing, and you will find it. There are a bunch of options you can choose. I accidentally took the 36 or 40 millimeter one, not realizing that it's not measuring the scale of the guy riding it, but the entire miniature. So that means from the bottom of the base to the top of his head, it's like 36 to 40 millimeters, which will make him way too small. To get him appropriately sized for Conquest, you want to go with probably 54 millimeters. Don't come and complain if you got that wrong, by the way, if you're not happy with the scale. It is not perfectly scaled. This miniature is not designed for Conquest, but I vaguely remember buying the 54 millimeter one, and that being... let me just quickly check my reviews. Yeah, I bought the 54 millimeter one, so there you go. So that's what resulted in me getting this miniature here, which, as you can see, is kind of appropriately scaled to Conquest because it's just sitting there on a monster base, basically. And the miniature itself, I've got to say, I mean, it's not perfectly aligned with 100 Kingdoms and Conquest. It looks very much Chaos Warrior-y, and that's the style that it's in. I've bought some of the other Creepy Print stuff that you guys may have seen if you've watched a lot of my other bat reps, where I've got a lot of infantry that look like Chaos Warriors. This guy's in the same sort of catalog list. And yeah, he just looks close enough to do the job, and you can sort of imagine that maybe he's just like a really brutal arch-theist, priest kind of guy, some sort of mounted crusader lord, for example, that's going into battle for 100 kingdoms, and it's just enough to sell the idea, I feel. So, as mentioned, the Sakurai, which I purchased and based here, I made sure not to glue them down too hard onto the actual stand. So what I was able to do is when the diorama was completed, I was able to just rip these guys off the circular base and stick them onto the diorama. So here we have the Jenga blocks, and I love Jenga blocks. These are actually very appropriately sized to build what's going to be a little platform for this guy to stand on and some stairs so that the Sakurai can walk down around him and just convey a bit of movement onto the platform and just make it feel like the whole thing's proceeding forwards. The Archangel's a very fast piece in the game, so you want to sort of give a bit of a sense of it being able to move somewhere. Of course, the steps need to be adjusted so that they look like an actual 38mm model can step down it. So I bought a few of these little MDF bases. I think these are designed to be MDF'd out for like Warhammer the Old World kind of style. I remember that being about the right size for cavalry bases. Much smaller than we're used to with Conquest after we've been playing Conquest for a while. Coming back to the other scale, they just look tiny. So the next step is just to slather everything with PVA glue. Obviously, PVA works wonders. It's designed for wood, it's wood glue, and this starts to make the construction really solid once you start slapping everything together, and that allows you to then put sand on it. The idea is just to glue so much sand onto the wood that it will eventually disguise the circular base of the guy riding it, so that the final result, you won't really be able to see much of that little circle sitting there, but it will still have the feel of him being the fulcrum of it, like the axis from which the infantry walk around. I also have a bunch of these little blocks, these little gritty, gravelly bits which can stick in there, and the idea is just to make sure that they're painted up grey, and just some of that should be showing in the end result, just to get the appearance of a rocky kind of outcrop there. And I've left a few gaps in the Jenga blocks here, as you guys can see. That's an opportunity to stuff in a little bit of static grass and a bit of foliage, just to make it look like an interesting sort of cliff. And just around the side, just again, you've got a lot of these little boulders here, just jutting out of the rocky outcrop, and it helps to sort of blend it into the main boulder that he's standing on. And just continuing to go around and glue everything up, and eventually you start to get to the point where there's so much sand infested in there that you can't really see the layers of the Jenga blocks as easily. Or if you can see it in some places, that's fine. It just makes it seem like a stratosphere, like not a stratosphere, the rock strata, so to speak. So this is a little bit ghetto. I just cut up some card here and put it on the bases just to give a vague impression of some tiles. These aren't really, appropriate size tiles that people would actually walk over. They really need to be about 1/8 of the size, I think. But because a lot of this is just going to be covered by the miniatures themselves and grass flock, etc., it's just in there to give a little bit of extra texture and interest and detail. So once you spray paint it, a lot of that starts to blend in, and yeah, it's just your basic black spray paint there, and then obviously this looks a bit weird, but it's just that brown in the background from Fantasy Games, Arbuckle's brown or whatever it is, and the brown is very wet right now. It's very watered down, which is why you can see it looking very pink, but once it dries, it just becomes completely brown. So there, the following day, you can see it is a lot more brown, and this is just me painting some layers of darker grey and lighter brown over it, and just messing around with a bit until you get a bit of variety in the base tones. A lot of this will be covered up with other colours, of course, and just creating a bit more of a stony look to the actual rocky outcrop part and the top of the stairs. And then we're working on the rider, so just going with some really basic blocking in colors. That bluish gray you see on his armor is what I start off with for my blue armor for 100 Kingdoms, and your basic reds and everything there. And the horse will eventually get highlighted up to close to white gray, but just everything's looking a bit muddy and brown. And then going over the steps with some lighter shades of grey just to highlight everything up. And you can see that works quite well with the big boulder that he's standing on. And Also washing it all with, every so often washing it with the Games Workshop Sepia, brown sepia, the liquid magic that everybody knows and loves. This goes over the actual, the knight himself plus the entire base, essentially just quite a lot of that stuff in there. Then we can begin highlighting up the horse. So this is whites and greys going on him now with a little bit of brown left behind, just to create a little bit of visual detail from a distance. And of course, as we always do, we're going to highlight up with some blue. And that's a mixture of a couple of different blues there to eventually get to the point where when you put the white highlights on top, some of this is shown in the background and it will work. But initially it looks a bit dull, but we get to a better result later. So there you go, a bit more blue coming on him now, and this will have washes put over it. As you can see, I'm not great at watering down my paints. It all looks pretty thick and gluggy. But I tend to be looking at my models from a distance. In fact, it's actually worse when I get up close to do my photography nowadays because I start to see all of my little errors and problems. But the main idea is that he's going to look very battlefield ready once he's done. And this is just continuing to add more white into the mix of the blue. And you get him looking a little bit more regal and more red going on top of the cloth there as well. And this is the point where he's just had quite a lot of white added to the blue mixture so that you can get that highlighting effect. Although it's not very smooth, I must say that this particular style does, with the resin underneath, does result in a very kind of brutalist kind of battle-worn kind of look, which has its own charm to it, I guess. And the red, I've been trying to go for a less flat red where the shadows are a bit of like red, darker red and brown mixed together with the red wiped over top, but still getting there. I mean, I'm trying to do a better red, but yeah, it's not too big a deal. The hammer as well, getting a little bit of gold treatment as well. That's always good to stand out, as well as a poke of purple on his little brooch there, on his it's keeping his cape in place. Then we're going to be doing some work on the base, and this is where we use just the cheap stuff. This is just your basic railway modeling green flock, which is not, I mean, it's just so quick and easy, and it looks good from a distance, and if you're going to be covering it with more detailed static grass, then it works wonders. If you're only using this by itself, it doesn't really produce the best result, but as an underlayer, really, it's good. And as you can see, we're leaving quite a lot of that rocky outcrop there, which really helps to blend the big boulder in place with the rest of the piece. And then that's when we can do the real stuff, which is to actually poke in some of a variety of different static grasses and things which you can get from different hobby stores. I would really recommend that if you have a bit of money to spare and you're not the best painter, and I'm not the best painter, obviously, one thing that can make your army just so much better, especially if you're going for a more natural sort of woodlands look, is just to put in glue in a variety of different static grasses, because it's just such an easy way of making whatever you're working on look really, really good. And as you can see here, it totally disguises the fact that the base of the mounted guy is separate from the rest of the piece. Really sells the idea that he's standing on the whole sort of structure, right? And that's when we can sort of plan out the position of these guys. I realized I'm only going to have enough space to put them in single file. I wanted to sort of stagger them out a bit, but that's not going to work. So they're going to be glued in one at a time around the side there. And we managed to fit in 7 of them. Not too sure if that's a significant number, but we've got 1 rider plus 7 Sakurai, and they are proceeding to battle or do whatever they need to do. And I can use some of the remaining Sakurai to act as retinue for my Theist Priest. So the Theist Priest himself is typically going to be joining militia and militia bowmen, and I think it'll be cool to have a few Sakurai sitting with him, especially the command stand guys, because they go really, really well with them. So that is the making of the Archangel, and one thing I will do here just briefly is I will just bring up my painted version. Where is he? Archangel Diorama. So this is just a slightly better version with the photography and better lighting, and you can see I was able to sort of get some nice pop-in colors with the photo settings. and just quite satisfying to push into battle. It's a very sturdy piece, and it's not too heavy to pick up. You know, you've got to sort of grasp it by the sandy sides of the base, but other than that, it looks pretty cool. And as you guys may have seen in some of the bat reps, it's quite well scaled with the rest of the army. So if you haven't seen these pictures already, I think I posted them to social media, but I just made a point of sort of not covering the entire sides of the base with green flock, because you get to see a little bit of the Jenga blocks in there, and I think I quite like that, because you're almost imagining just like a cutoff, really, of where he's standing on. Probably could have done a bit more detail on his face, but I'm just lazy at the end of the day. I decided to leave it, and I mostly look at my miniatures from a distance anyhow. I'm just going to check to see if I've still got my pictures of him. I think we had at least one picture of him in battle. Here we go here. So that's sort of what he looks like on the tabletop. If you guys haven't already seen this bat rep, it's on my channel of the 100 Kings versus Spies. Very good game. But it's just quite cool that you can just use a monster space for him, and he can very easily slot into a game like this where he's just about to charge some Avatara to back up his Theist Priest in battle with the Theist Priest Sakai retinue, and it ended up looking really, really good. Well, that is all I wanted to share for you today, guys. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll be back soon with some of our regular programming. If you like this, please remember to like and subscribe, and we'll see you again soon.